Your guest there spoke of voter apathy, and I suppose it's one issue that has been a thorn in the neck of so many of these parties to a point where some of these parties even made last-ditch efforts to beg voters to go to the polls. I also received a message from one of the parties that I'm not going to mention to plead, like literally blaming me to, rather begging me to go vote. And I'm going to speak to some of these parties right here as to how voter apathy has affected them. I'm going to start with the Congress of the People, COPE. And very good morning to you, Mr. Bloom. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Spiwe, and good morning to the listeners as well, the viewers as well. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Just how badly has voter apathy affected the party?
You know, people, when we were doing door-to-door, they were very disillusioned. People have asked, why must we go and vote? And for 25 years, we are voting, and it seems that things are getting worse in the country. So we are saying that it's a very serious problem in the country, that people are promising, parties are promising people things, but they are not delivering. That is the problem why people were feeling so disillusioned.
Are you also not of the school of thought that maybe in some instances voter apathy is a party specific? People do not want to vote for a specific party because it's not delivering or it hasn't delivered in the past. How has COPE fared in that regard?
No, the problem is the ruling party have not delivered. Opposition parties are not in power. Opposition parties are contributing and listening and fighting for their constituency. But now, when the ruling party is not delivering, people don't see that. People are seeing that the ruling party, it's no use in voting. I mean, people have said to us, we are voting for 25 years now, but we are still staying. For instance, Kliptown, we were there last week, and people were asking us, the ruling party have promised us, why must we go and vote? I can tell you that the voter turnout will be very low this year. I can say it without any doubt.
Okay. Now, I see COPE has scored about 1,230 votes. That is after 316,214 votes have been counted. What's your impression of the score?
You know, 2014, it was very bad. Now it is not even 500,000 votes that is already that is counted, and we are standing at 1,200. We see light in the tunnel, because I am saying 2014 by this time it was not even 500,000. But now we are standing at 1,200. So it's positive. And as I'm saying, that it's not even 500,000 votes that is been counted nationally. So we are very hopeful that things will come out. That figure will come up, and we hope that our votes must be doubled like the 2014 votes.
Mr. Bloom, I'm very curious to know how, you speak of doubling of votes. I'm very curious to know how COPE will be able to achieve that. The hot topic in South Africa now is the land issue. We know that the EFF has made quite some headway insofar as gaining support, popular support from most South Africans. And COPE, on the other hand, has been swimming against the tide. What makes you so confident that these figures will double?
There's many people who believe in what we have said, that we respect the constitution of this country, and we still believe in that up until now. We are saying that the leaders who have drafted our constitution have not made a mistake. We are not going after popularity. We are going on facts, and we are standing by what we have said. And we will be proven right.
Isn't that politically damaging, though? Because most of black South Africans, all they talk about is land, and you advocate for something total opposite.
But are we saying that Nelson Mandela and the people who have drafted that constitution was wrong? If we are saying that we are against black people, I am asking, are we saying that the people who have drafted, Nelson Mandela have signed that constitution, are we saying that he was wrong in signing that constitution? This constitution was drafted by the people of South Africa.
Mr. Bloom, I'm going to let you go while you still monitor the scoreboard. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was Congress of the People National Spokesperson Dennis Bloom speaking to us about how the DA has fared. I mean, he also talked about Nelson Mandela, and it's very difficult to say at this point whether the goal or the dream of 1994 has indeed materialized, given, on the economic periphery, given the sluggish growth of the South African economy, and as well as the alarming levels of unemployment and poverty. Let me now speak to one of the oldest parties in South Africa, the Pan-Africanist Congress. I'll be speaking to the Secretary General, Mr. Apapoe. Very good morning to you, Mr. Poe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
Perhaps one of the biggest issues affecting most of these parties here is voter apathy, people refraining from vote, some of them destroying vote as a result of some protest action.
Yeah.
How has PAC fared in that regard? How has it affected the party?
We believe that the PAC will still do well in these elections, particularly in provinces such as Eastern Cape. We are also seeing us doing well in the Western Cape, KZN. We are hoping to do well, Gauteng and in Limpopo. But it is true that there's a voter apathy. Voters are disillusioned out there. They believe that all political parties are the same. They don't see the difference among us as political parties. So it's up to us as an organizations to go and teach voters about our differences and what the PAC stands for.
I mean, you talk of voters being disillusioned. Don't you think, or rather, I should put it more clearly, do you think that PAC is still relevant with most South Africans?
All the parties that you see here today speak the PAC language, and since from our inception, we've been speaking the same language. If there's any party that has been consistent, it's PAC. So our message remains relevant as ever. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all these parties talking of land, which has been the PAC position. Others of talking free education, that has been the PAC position. The only thing that we need to do is to convince them to come back home.
I quite agree with you there when you say that most of these parties speak the same language. I mean, the issue of black consciousness is increasingly on the rise. But then, unfortunately, the factional battles between the APC, between the PAC and ZAPO are actually costing the party some votes.
Definitely, we are working on some of those issues, and we are hoping that the public out there will begin to see a united PAC first and foremost. And secondly, we'll also be talking to these other parties which are thinking alike, like I'm saying, to come back home to the PAC.
Don't you blame yourselves? Don't you have yourselves to blame then for some of the disgruntled members of the party, some of the voters who turned your back on the PAC as a result of the factional battles within the party?
Partly we can blame ourselves, but there are many other issues that can contribute towards the organization winning the elections. There is an issue of resources, there's an issue of visibility, the media-wise. We have been shunned by many media houses as an organization. Despite the fact that our campaign has been very vibrant, we have not been able to see us in the media and all of those. So all those factors come together and contribute to us not doing well. But of course, partly there's also a blame that we are taking as an organization. Hence, I'm saying we are also working on some of the shortcomings that we have as an organization.
Do you think you will be maintaining this kind of score moving forward?
Yes, and we are very optimistic, even now, that we'll still do well in these elections, comparatively speaking to the previous elections.
All right, Mr. Poe, thank you so much for joining us. That was the Secretary General of the Pan-Africanist Congress, Mr. Apa Poe. Now, let's chat to the Freedom Front Plus, and I'll be speaking to Mr. Philip van Staden. He is the chairperson of the Gauteng province. Mr. van Staden, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
I see that the Freedom Plus has already scored, let me see, according to the updated scores, last updated at exactly 3 minutes before 3 a.m. Let's see how the party is faring. 16,965. When I was going through your website, the first line was about 25 years under the ANC government and the country is still in a terrible state of repair. The party is not very clear on what it can do to South Africans. All it does is to lay the blame on the ANC. Fair enough, you did at some point talk about a free market economy. So what is it that the Freedom Plus will do for South Africans?
Well, I think first of all, if you have read our manifesto, we will see what our plan is for when we came into power, into government. First of all, the very first thing that we will do, we will cut the cabinet ministers from 35 to 16. And we will give our attention very much to education, infrastructure in South Africa, the economy, and so on and so on. You must go and read our manifesto, and you will see what exactly our plan for South Africa's future is, and what we are planning to do to solve the problems in the country. And at the moment, we have the problems we have in South Africa. We need to build the country together, and we must stop living in the past and look ahead for the future.
So what is it that you promised the 16,000 voters who had voted so far? What attracted them to you?
Well, I think it's a fact that some of the other parties couldn't come to terms with their promises. They kept the voters for the past 25 years. The voters came over to us in this instance. And I think also that the voters wanted the Freedom Front parties in coalition governments on national and provincial levels to give effect to our manifesto, what we have in this past election.
Don't you think that by diverting attention from your mandate and from your manifesto and focusing on other parties, for instance, the battle between BLF, it affected your party in a way?
Well, you must understand that the BLF's constitution is against the country's constitution. You can't have a party registered which is only for a certain group of individuals in this country. That's against the law. That's why we took the matter up to court. And the court said at the end of the day, but the Freedom Front Plus was actually correct. The correct procedures wasn't followed by the IEC to register the BLF as political party. And they didn't publish it in the government gazette. So in that instance, we make a point of view to say that the IEC was wrong in this matter. The court gave us the order to say that the IEC was wrong in this instant, and the Freedom Front Plus was correct. But South Africa is South Africa for everyone and not for only certain racial groups.
So just how confident are you that you'll be maintaining the score or you'll do much better moving forward?
Yeah, well, you must understand, as we've picked up, we have already won VDs in the Northern Cape, Northwest, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, Gauteng and Free State. And we are very confident that this will go on for the rest of the tallies as it's coming out. And we're very confident to go back with a bigger team to the National Assembly in Parliament and to be getting more seats in Gauteng, the Free State, Northwest, and seats as well in Limpopo and Mpumalanga at the end of the day.
Okay, so there's also the issue of voter apathy, some of the voters who did not vote as a result of disgruntlement of some sort. Did you get a sense that perhaps some of your voters abstained from voting as a result of one issue or the other?
No, I don't think some of our voters abstained from this election. We have this problem since 1994. There's a certain group of voters in this country who have never registered and have never taken part in the democratic elections in this country. But it's actually a big problem because they throw their future away. You must vote in elections into this country to have a future in South Africa. The stay away is not from our votes. I think it's more from other parties who wasn't in line anymore with their policies, but definitely not our voters. We had a very hard campaign and we see to it yesterday. But all our voters went out to go and vote in the election of yesterday.
Mr. Van Staden, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. That was Philip Van Staden. He's the chairperson of the Freedom Front Plus in Gauteng. And perhaps the big issue, as I've mentioned earlier on, is the issue of voters abstaining or voter apathy. You know, some of the economic or rather political pundits that I've been chatting to are also of the view that, you know, there's no national vision, hence voter apathy. Back in 1994, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, you know, the vision was national reconciliation, it was a freedom. But now, 25 years later, what is the national vision that all South Africans can subscribe to, that can unite and bind all South Africans? And I quite agree with Mr. Van Staden. It is very, very important that every South African needs to exercise their democratic and constitutional vote and determine their own destiny and not let another person do that. Arabi, let's back to you.
Yes.